way too much stuff.
I'm ready to say.
Oh, yeah, that's the shirt you can wear. And he's the first professor.
We're going to have a quick spiritual thought that can last another from like 30 seconds to 20 minutes, but let's try to keep it a little bit short. And that is, anything you gain, a few insights from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this last weekend that was meaningful to you. Anything you heard or thought about that you thought was meaningful?
What was it? Brother Johnson or something? He talked about grad school and reading the Book of Mormon every semester, and I was like, wow, maybe not every semester, but at least every day, you know, like when he felt overwhelmed, he like read Book of Mormon. I thought that was great too.
That's great. Those are great tidbits of ideas and ways of keeping you grounded. When things get tough, you ground yourself on the stuff that's good, that's meaningful to you. Awesome comment. Oh, right there. So I was saying the camera.
I've forgotten the specifics, but I definitely came away with a feeling, because I feel overwhelmed right now, and I think that's pretty.
Because of that or because of life?
No, because of life and grad school, which I think is like pretty, like a lot of other people feel overwhelmed. But I just kind of like came away from conference feeling like, you know, there's this bigger picture of like grad school is important, and obviously I want to be successful and like do well in grad school, but like the Lord wants that for me too, but He also wants a lot more for my life, and especially like spending time with my family, and like one of them, I think someone mentioned that like he never met somebody who joined or converted to the gospel later in life, being like, oh, I wish I would have found it later, or like I wish I would have found it sooner to spend time with my family, and just kind of, I don't know, came away like wanting to spend more time with my family and like making sure there's a good balance in my life.
Beautiful comment. That's awesome.
I don't remember the quote exactly, but Sister Obertu in the women's session said something about the effect that adversity doesn't define you, but it can refine you.
It shouldn't define you, but it can refine you. That was in the women's conference. So awesome.
The women's conference was fire. You haven't watched it.
Women's color. I didn't watch. I wasn't invited. But man, stuff happened there.
You can still watch it on YouTube. That's what I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Stuff went down at women's conference.
Good. I don't know. Probably always.
What was it? Was it awesome that the temples were announced at women's conference?
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting. I think that's really interesting that happened. For whatever reason, that was fascinating. This morning I went to the temple. I worked in the temple in the morning, so I got down there. We got there early because of some changes. And at 4:50, they were ready to go. So there were some kids there with some parents at 4:50. The very first witness at the baptismal font was a mom and her daughter. So awesome. Things are changing. It's good stuff. That's good change. It's really fascinating. She was probably like this tall, 11-year-old, and she's kind of leaning over the balcony like this to watch. I'm like, this is spectacular. So cool. Anything else?
Just something I think is cool is I just like, I don't know, it's not that I love the changes, but it's cool to see like a focus more on like doctrine and maybe a little less on cultural things in a lot of aspects, because I think there's a lot of things that sometimes I do that are just cultural that really have like no importance, just like a thing you do, and it's kind of like, I don't know if it might use the word, but to like take a step back and look at what's the doctrine and what's the most important thing. And sometimes it's not like first equal favorites.
I couldn't tell you if this was like talked about a lot or just something that hit me a lot, but just the fact that like covenants are powerful and can bring us power. Like I feel like prior to this conference, I thought a lot about covenants and the effect of like I've made covenants, I renew my covenants on Sunday. Covenants, great. But I had this feeling during the conference that like the more we learn about our covenants, the more powerful they become.
there were several talks on that, weren't there? Several things about covenants. So true.
I liked Elder Ballard's talk because okay, you can judge me for this comment.
Oh, I will.
Only you should.
Just kidding.
I struggled to connect with him as an apostle for many years now. I don't know why, I just haven't felt like, I don't know. But then he talked about his wife, like a real struggle he's having. I'm like, okay, you are human. I know that. I know that's I know they struggle with things. But it was got so emotional when he was just talking about how important it is to spend time with those that you love while you have them, because they won't always be here. And sorry.
Well, keep going. Just breathe through. I do the same. I was getting shook when I was talking too, so just keep going.
Yeah, so I wasn't expecting to cry. And Elder Oaks talked about the spirit world, and sorry, it'll make more sense to explain why I'm crying. I lost my dad, and it was just beautiful. I'm so sorry. I didn't think I would cry. But I just loved Elder Oaks. Talked about that the spirit world will be so much better than we think, so much better than we can imagine, and that if we trust in the Lord, everything will work out. Siblings that have gone astray or family members that haven't stayed true to their covenants, it'll be people that struggle with, with remaining active in the church with whatever trials that they have, it'll all be all right through the atonement, and it'll be so much better than we think. And I'm so sorry I just lost it. I just thought I could say it, but I couldn't.
No one's holding anything against you at all for doing that. We all feel empowered by the fact that you just did that.
I'm sorry.
Totally empowered you just did that. Don't ever apologize for this again. Okay. Beautiful comment. We get shook over these. We don't get shook over this kind of stuff. It's such, it's deep in the heart. Anybody else want to throw anything else out there? Great comment. We're not. I guess we can't really go into the whole guessing what's going to happen next 6 months from now. We were all hanging.
I feel like you want us to guess for 6 months though, because
So, and really quick, Sarah, just so you know, there was a general conference that happened this last. Do you know about this thing? There in the church, there's this event where the leaders of the church, they get up and they talk about what? Things that matter to the people who belong to this religion, and this church is. This university is based on that. So we talk about this quite a bit, but it was a big deal. It was a really big deal. And these guys made a lot of changes and said some things that are empowering to the people who follow this. I just want to make sure that made sense to you, so you're not wondering what the heck is going on. Okay, so if you read, we were challenged to do what by the prophet. The last thing he said, what did he challenge us to do? Last words out of his mouth. Do this. Goodbye.
Prepare ourselves for conference.
Prepare yourselves, and how does he want you to prepare yourself for conference?
About the restoration.
Yeah, he wants you to go back and study the first vision and the restoration, but the first vision in particular, because that's what they're commemorating. Right word, commemorating. So we should be studying that. So if you look at it, there's a comment down below in the scriptures where Oliver Cowdery made his comment. He states in there that what happened will not be forgotten. And the prophet said what? What do you say about this thing that's coming up? It'll be unforgettable. Something like that. He said it'll be unforgettable, what we're going to experience. So I think that's something you ought to study, you should think about. Great input, everybody. We could spend all day on that. We really could. That would be just fantastic. But we're not. So, anybody else have any more comments? I feel like there's somebody out there who didn't say what they wanted to say. I'm feeling it. If somebody out there wanted to say something, you're not saying it, don't stop. I will sit here until I'm convinced you've all said what you want to say. You got 5 more seconds to do it. That's more than 5 seconds. I'll continue on. If you change your mind, you want to say it, please do. Before we talk about remote sensing, I have these questions for you. I don't know why number 1 is up here. This is your take-home exam. I sat there and pondered over these and thought about them. This is what I've come up with for this is your midterm number 1. And you got a week. The clock starts as soon as this class is over. And then next week, either bring them in here and give them to me on a piece of paper. Go ahead and slaughter some trees. Or you can slaughter coal and send by electronic version of it, whichever way you're going to have to take some resources to do it. But here they are. Number 1, describe the relationship between pattern and process. Oh, that book I was telling you about, if you want to borrow, you can. It's called Landscape Ecology, Pattern and Process. In City Landscape, describe the relationship between pattern and process. What are ecological processes and how do patterns emerge as a result of these interactions? And you got to think about both biotic and abiotic components to this. Does that question make sense? I bring these up here and post them all here electronically before I hand them on a piece of paper over to you or sent to you by Learning Suite or email, because I want your feedback actually first. If that does not make sense, let's clarify it so everyone knows what I'm after with these questions. Number 2, describe drone technology and their application, landscape analysis, and pattern detection. So I would like you to just look at the literature, whatever you can find on where drones have been used, where we're using them now. If you want to talk about the application down the road, maybe to you specifically, to things generally, try to keep it into our field of landscape ecology. I'd appreciate that. 3rd, articulate the meaning and significance of scale in landscape ecology research and management. How does scale, what is scale and what, that's why I say articulate. Describe what it is. Make sure it's clear in all of our minds what this is implying and how does it apply in these areas. Research and management. Next one, what is the historical and current development of GIS? What do you predict the future will be like related to GIS? I think that's such a part of this question is, I started this when I was in the 90s. I got into a GIS class and we were using ArcPlot. You type in code to move your box, your frame around. You code it to move up so many pixels and over so many pixels, and you change colors with code. And man, that is extinct. That process is gone. And now we do what we're doing currently, but what's going to happen down the road? Where do you see this going? And what is it? How does it relate now in the future to what you're going to be doing is GIS related? Here's the next one, number 5. Number 5, these are off. And I will send these to you. You'll get all these today, Learning Suite. I'll post them so you can just access them. How does ecological succession theory, which is related to disturbance and post-disturbance response, play a role in spatial heterogeneity, and how do plant adaptations influence this response?
Okay, hold on. So the first question at the top is separate from the others. That's the one we write 1 to 2 pages about, and these other ones we write in short, like paragraphs?
No.
Or you want 1 to 2 pages on each question throughout the whole thing, so you want like 10 pages.
10. Well, 6. And whether you fill up the entire page, that's up to you to decide now. But I want to make sure you're not giving me drones are cool. They can be used in natural resource management.
So you want us to rant?
Technology can be good?
You want to go
I'd like
on
you
a
to-
rant about the drones?
Let me go on. I want you to rant about drones.
Okay.
I'll tell you the details of what I have in mind in a second. So right now I'm posting the questions, and then I'll tell you what I want out of here. Here's the last one. Choose one of the following. Metrics for quantifying landscape heterogeneity. I've talked about a few of them, but I'll go into more detail about some others. We'll eventually get into frag stats, which is more about this. If you want to get a head start on it, we also kind of cover some of the metrics we've already been talking about in labs and a little bit in class. 2 is image classification. If you want to talk about supervised classification, what that's all about, you can do that for vegetation indices, which we talked about last time. What they are, where they're used. You can choose which one you want to do. So what I'm asking for each of these questions is for...
What do you want us to do once we choose it?
I want you to write about it. So you pick it.
Just define it and talk about what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, vegetation indices, here's what they are. This is where they're used. This is where they were used historically. Here's a bunch of them. This is how they differ from each other. And maybe describe how one vegetation index is useful in a certain setting compared to another. And And my hope with this one is you're going to pick on something that you think would be most interesting to you personally, related to your research. If you want to throw another one on here right now, I'm more than happy to consider throwing another topic. So here's what I want. I could have said, okay, today you're going to have your midterm, and in this 15 minutes, you're going to get this test I've dropped on the table in front of you, and away you go. And you could have crammed hard for that test, and then regurgitate on it, and then you would have forgotten most of that stuff later on. But I think a better thing for graduate students, in my opinion, is for you to go through a process of your own to synthesize what you think are most relevant, meaningful parts to these questions and answer them by exploring what you currently know. Feel free to write what you know now, but also you can dig into literature that's available, online stuff. You can go to pull up Google Scholar and see what other authors have written about it. And if you do that, my hope is that you're going to put down here your statement of what that is, and then a citation. And at the bottom of that, have your citation list. And so for every question, I'm picturing a page, a couple, 3 paragraphs on the subject. At the bottom, maybe there's a couple of citations down there that relate to that page. What I'm saying is if you went to page 2, I wouldn't care. If you went to page 3, I'd be like, you don't need to go on forever. 2 is plenty.
Okay, so the very first question, can you go into more detail what you're asking exactly between pattern and process in landscape ecology?
I'd love
Because
to.
the other ones I feel like have kind of a
You've got something. You're missing something in the first one.
specificity.
Okay, let's do this. Let's take these right here. And
We'll
I'm
just
going
get
to
rid
move
of
over
that first
to.
one. How about you just remove the first one and then we'll be
yeah.
off and running. I'll write an extra page on the other one.
The person who created this whole thing, that's what she calls her book. There's not a chance of taking that one off, because this is what landscape ecology is.
But didn't you say her book, she said that she doesn't even use her book anymore? So even by her own definition, the book isn't good.
I like how you're working now. That's great. No, it's like one of my favorite questions of this whole. That's why it's number one. That's like my favorite one. So, ecological processes are the response to usually the components of an ecosystem, which are made up of structure. What's the structure of an environment? Any environment, what is it? What is the structure of it?
Geology and
Geologic layers, excellent. The strata from deposits, historically, I love that. Anything else? Structure. The plants that are growing there, their cover, how much cover they present, their heights, excellent. That's another one.
microbiota.
The microbiota, including what's in the soil and the surface of the soil, excellent. The interaction, so that's an interesting thought. You've got all these things out here, and that can lead into the next part. So you've got all the dynamics that are associated with it. So the structure is what the rock surface and how that's layered out there across this topography. The slope itself.
You say like physical structure?
Physical structure of the environment, yes, that's part of the structure of it, yeah. The physical environment, the abiotic environment, really. And maybe I'm just answering the question for you, I don't know, but probably not. That's all structure, and there's more to it than that. There's all these different components. The water is present. What is the function of some of those things? Well, how do they function? Function.
Erosion?
Okay, so soils that are detaching, that are moving, create erosion processes. What's the erosion itself? Process. The function, the result of that. The processes are kind of the result of these structure, and the function is what these things perform. Plants, what do plants do? They produce chlorophyll, they have biomass that captures radiant energy. What happens is photosynthesis is the process of converting that into a chemical form that can be used to sustain that individual's life, as well as other things that are using it. The consumers that are consuming it on the trail, their trails depend on it. Infiltration is a process that's related to the structure, the surface, the rocks, the soils, the texture of the soil, the plants that are on there, all influence how water moves down a site, changing the way it infiltrates and works through a system, the process of infiltration. They're all tied together, right? And so my question then to you is, here you've got these processes that are related to the structure and function, they give rise to certain patterns on the surface. And a lot of landscape ecology is trying to understand and characterize these patterns. And if you wanted to relate that question down here to this one right here, I would totally get it. To me, they're tightly interrelated. Number 1 and number 5. But I still think they're different enough. I want you to discuss them in a separate context. What are ecological processes? How do patterns emerge as a result of these interactions? And that's why I want you to think through and find something and write about that. Drones. You've got this, right? You know a lot about drones. You can find stuff on that. The ideas of scale, historical and future of GIS. Have you ever listened to any of the chapters of the book called Augmented? One time in a class, I forget which class it was, they had people read one chapter of Augmented. You know what that is? I think it was written in 2013 or 14. So maybe later than that, I forget, it's about maybe 2015 is when it was written. And I'd be tempted to have you just download it on Overdrive or whatever.
Yeah, that's the show you can It is the first.
We're going to have a quick spiritual thought. I think will last from like 30 seconds to 20 minutes, but let's try to keep it a little bit short. And that is, anything you gain in a few insights from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this last weekend that was meaningful to you. Anything you heard or thought about that you thought was meaningful to you?
What was it? Brother Johnson or something? He talked about grad school and reading the Book of Mormon every semester, and I was like, wow, maybe not every semester, but at least every day, you know, like when he felt overwhelmed, he read. I thought that was
Those are great tidbits of ideas and ways to keep you grounded. When things get tough, you ground yourself on that stuff that's good, that's meaningful to you. Awesome comment. So it goes over all these different aspects, including natural and environmental. Oh, right there.
I've forgotten the specifics, but I definitely came away with the feeling, because I feel overwhelmed right now, and I think that's pretty.
Because of that, or because of life?
No, because of life in grad school, which I think is pretty, a lot of other people feel overwhelmed. But I just kind of came away from conference feeling there's this bigger picture of grad school's important, and obviously I want to be successful.
Write checks. Basically, you give you checks and fill out.
The Lord wants that for me too, but He also wants a lot more in my life, especially spending time with my family.
And how we depend on.
One of them, I think, someone mentioned he never met somebody who joined or converted to the gospel later in life, being oh, I wish I would have.
So
I was later, or I wish I would have found it sooner.
One week today, at this time, if you can't do it,
wanting to spend more
Got
time with my family.
no work to do,
Making sure there's a good balance in my life.
trouble. Beautiful. That's awesome. But, hey, 6 pages.
I don't remember the quote exactly, but Sister Alberto in the women's session said something about the effect that adversity doesn't define you, but it can refine you.
It should not define you, but it can refine you. That was in the women's conference. So
It's sort of experimental. I don't think I've ever done it.
Women's Colorado. I didn't watch. I wasn't invited. But man, stuff happened there.
You can still watch it on YouTube, that's what I did.
Did you? Stuff went down at women's conference.
probably always.
What was it? Was it awesome that the temples were announced at women's conference?
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting. Anything that's going to ask me about this? I will post it. I think that's really interesting that happened. For whatever reason, that was fascinating. This morning I went to the temple. I worked in the temple in the morning, so I got down there. We got there early because of some changes. And at 4:50, they were ready to go. There were some kids there with some parents at 4:50. The very first witness at the baptismal font was a mom and her daughter. So awesome. Things are changing. good stuff. That's good change. It's really fast. And she was probably like this tall, 11-year-old, and she's kind of leaning over the balcony like this to watch. I'm like, this is spectacular. I don't want to. So cool. Anything else?
Just something I think is cool is I just like, I don't know, not that I love the changes, but it's cool to see like a focus more on like doctrine and maybe a little less on cultural things.
I like it
In a lot of aspects, because I think there's a lot of things that
What's the kind of writing that are just cultural?
that really have like dissertation to do, and then it's kind of like,
Just throw it in the
I don't
sound.
know, when they might need to go, it's like, take a step back and look at what's the doctrine and what's the most important thing.
You're going to do them all at the very end as one big design thing, and that's to look like the communities and multiple, the same reference with multiple answers.
I couldn't tell you if this was like talked about a lot or just something that hit me a lot, but just the fact that like covenants are powerful.
That's all I've got to say about it.
And how
Anything else you want to say
bring
about
us
this?
power. Like I feel like prior to this conference,
I'm excited.
I thought a lot about covenants and the effect of like I make covenants, I renew my covenants on Sunday. Covenants, great. But I had this feeling during the conference that like the more we learn about our covenants, the more powerful they
I want to
become
talk
for
about
us.
Ramonson. We've been discussing it already.
There were several talks on that, weren't there?
We're going to have
Several things we don't.
presentations coming in here. People talking about the subject.
I like
It's
Albert
meaningful. It's very
Ballard's
important.
talk, because
And landscape
okay,
stuff.
You can judge me.
So the
But it's
terms-
common.
Oh, I will.
I think you should.
Measure acquisition.
I struggled to connect with him as an apostle for many years now. I don't know why, I just haven't like felt like, I don't know. But then he like talked about his wife, like a real struggle he's having. I'm like, okay, you are human. I know that, I know that's like, I know they're all, they struggle with things, but it was like, that's so emotional when he was just talking about how important it is to spend time with those that you love while you have them, because they won't always be here. And like,
I did the same.
yeah, so I wasn't
This is
expecting
where they
that.
apply. These are some real.
And the
critical
Elder
things.
Oaks talked about the spirit world and,
This right here, Westerby and Lake.
sorry, it'll be persons that explain why I'm crying, I
That are
lost my
the
dad.
backbone and basis for state
It's
transition
just-
thoughts. And these Westerby and Lake are both Australians.
So sorry.
Wait,
I
you're
just got
Australians. That book right there is just fantastic.
What?
It's so awesome.
I just loved Elder
It
Oaks
describes
talked
the
about
idea of pattern
that
process.
the spirit world
Really
will be,
discuss
the
it.
spirit world will be
They'll
so
talk
much
about
better than we
coastal
think,
hydrology and how water moves
so much
down.
better than we can imagine.
And they'll talk
And
about
that,
feedback systems,
if
positive
we
and
trust in the
negative,
Lord,
that give rise to
everything will work out.
overall
Siblings that have
positive
gone astray or
response and
family members that
environmental
haven't
based
stayed true to their covenants, like, it'll be people that struggle with.
I am not saying that at all. What I'm saying to you is
You know,
here's
with
some great.
remaining active in the church with whatever trials that they have, like, it'll all be all right through the atonement,
But there are-
and it'll be so much
This
better
right here is
than
Brian and Noel.
And I'm so sorry I just
Brian's
lost
the one
it.
who got the
I
triangle.
just thought I could
Nobody
say
gets it all.
it, but I couldn't.
No one's holding anything against you at all for doing that. We all feel empowered by the fact that you just did that.
I'm sorry.
Totally empowered that you just did that. I don't ever apologize for doing that. Okay. Beautiful comment. We get children of these, we all get children of this kind of stuff. It's such, it's deep in the heart. Anybody else want to throw anything else out there? Great comment. We're not, I guess we can't really go into stress tolerance. Guessing what's going to happen next 6 months from now. We're all hanging.
I feel like you want us to guess for some stuff, because
So, and really quick, Sarah, just so you know, there was a general conference that happened this last, you know about this thing? There, in the church, there's this event where the leaders of the church, they get up and they talk about what? Things that matter to the people who belong to this religion and this church is, not this church, this university is based on that. So we talk about this quite a bit, but it was a big deal. It was a really big deal. And these guys made a lot of changes and said some things that are empowering.
Stress tolerance, competition.
I just want to make sure that made sense to me. I wonder what makes it going on.
Successful competition. We talk about what makes a plan successful competition.
Okay, so if you read, we were challenged to do what by the prophet. The last thing he said, what did he challenge us to do?
Pulling water. Yes. Is to tolerance to temperature characteristics?
Last one,
Yes.
that was good. Do
They
this.
can still, but still compete,
Fine.
right? At some point though, we start coming around temperature, all.
Prepare yourselves, and how does one prepare yourself? Yeah, you want you to go back and study the first vision and the restoration, but the first vision in particular, because that's what they're commemorating. Right word, commemorating. So we should be studying that. So if you look at it, there's a comment down below in the scriptures where Oliver Cowdery made his comment. He states in there that what happened will not be forgotten. And
Again, you think about
the
that.
prophet said what? What do you say about this thing that's coming up? It'll be unforgettable. Something like that. He said it'll be unforgettable, what we're going to experience. So I think that's something you ought to study, you should think about. Great input, everybody. We could spend all day on that. We really could. That would be just fantastic. But we're not. So, I'll tell you more comments. I feel like there's somebody out there who didn't say what they wanted to say. I'm feeling it. If somebody out there wanted to say something, you're not saying it, don't stop. I will sit here until I'm convinced you've all said what you want to say. You got 5 more seconds to do it. That's one of my seconds. I'll continue on. If you change your mind, you want to say it, please. Before we talk about remote sensing, I have these questions for you. I don't know why number 1 is up here. This is your take-home exam. I sat there and pondered over these and thought about them. This is what I've come up with for you. This is your midterm number 1. And you got a week. The clock starts as soon as class is over. And then next week, either bring them in here and give them a piece of paper. Go ahead and slaughter some trees. Or you can slaughter coal and set by electronic.
That also goes right to succession.
But here they are.
The attributes of
Number 1, describe the relationship between pattern and process. Oh, that book I was telling you about, I feel like I borrowed it can. It's called Landscape Ecology, Pattern and Process. So landscape, describe the relationship between pattern and process. What are ecological processes and how do patterns emerge as a result of these interactions? You got to think about both. These are called biotic, abiotic.
Noble Slater is right.
Does that question make sense? I bring these up here to post them all in here electronically for you or sent to you by Learning Suite or email because I want your
What are the
feedback
characteristics of plants that allow
If that does not make sense, let's clarify it so everyone knows what I'm after.
Yeah, certain strategies for being invasive on a
Number
disturbed
2,
site.
describe drone technology and their application, landscape analysis, and pattern detection. I would like you to just look at the literature, whatever you can find on where drones have been used, where we're using them now. If you want to talk about the application down the road, maybe to you specifically, to things generally, try to keep it into our field of landscape ecology. I appreciate that. Third, articulate the meaning and significance of scale in landscape ecology research and management. How is scale? What is scale and what? That's why I say articulate. Describe what it is. Make sure it's clear in all of our minds what this is implying and how does it apply in these areas. Research and management. Next one, what is the historical and current development of GIS? What do you predict the future will be like related to GIS? That's such a, part of this question is, I started this when I was in the 90s. I got into a GIS class, and we were using ArcPlot, type in code to move your box, your frame around, code it to move up so many pixels and over so many pixels, and you change colors with code, and man, that is extinct. That process is gone. And now we do what we're doing currently, but what's going to happen down the road? Where do you see this going? And what is it? How does it relate now in the future to what you're going to be doing this GIS related? Here's the next one, number 5. Number 5, these are off. And I will send these to you. You'll get all these today, Learning Suite. I'll post them so you can just access them. How does ecological succession theory, which is related to disturbance and post-disturbance response, play a role in spatial heterogeneity? And how do plant adaptations influence this response?
Okay, hold on. So the first question at the top is separate from the others. That's the one we write 1 to 2 pages about, and the other ones we write in short, like paragraphs. Or you want 1 to 2 pages on each question throughout the whole thing, so you want like 10 pages.
Well, 6. And whether you fill up the entire page, that's up to you to decide now. But I want to make sure you're like not giving me, drones are cool, they can be used in natural resource management.
So you want us to rant?
Technology's gonna be good?
So you want to go
I'd
on
like
a
you to-
rant about the drones?
Let me go on. I want you to rant about drones.
Okay.
I'll tell you the details of what I have in mind in a second. So right now I'm posting the questions, and then I'll tell you what I want. Here's the last one. Choose one of the following. Metrics, quantifying landscape heterogeneity. Talking about a few of them, but I'll go into more detail about some others. We'll eventually get into frag stats, which is more about this.
You should know this is.
If you want to get a head start on it, we also kind of cover some of the metrics we've already been talking about, labs and.
I used to.
2 is image classification. We're going to talk about supervised classification. What that's all about. You can do that for vegetation indices. What they are, where they're used. You can choose which one you want to do. So what I'm asking for, brings these
What do you
questions
want us
for.
to do once we choose it?
Oh, wait, write about it. So you pick it.
Just define it and talk about what it is.
Yes. Yes, vegetation indices, here's what they are. This is where they're used. This is where they were used historically. Here's a bunch of them. This is how they differ from each other. And maybe describe how one vegetation index is useful in a certain setting compared to another. And my hope with this one is you're going to pick on something that you think would be most interesting to you personally, related to your research. If you want to throw another one on here right now, I'm more than happy to consider throwing another one. So here's what I want. I could have said, okay, today you're going to have your midterm, and it's 50 minutes. You're going to get this test I've dropped on the table in front of you, and away you go. And you could have crammed hard for that test, and then regurgitate on it, and then
Others talked about different applications in our.
most of that stuff so later on. But I think a better thing for graduate students, in my opinion, is for you to go through the process of your own, to synthesize what you think are most relevant for the marks to these questions and answer them by exploring what you currently know. Feel free to write what you know now, but also you can dig into literature that's available online. You can go pull up Google Scholar to see what other authors have written about it. And if you do that, my hope is that you're going to put down here your statement of what that is, and then a citation. And at the bottom of that, have your citation list. And so for every question, I'm sure
It's got to be in the race.
a couple, 3 paragraphs on the subject. At the bottom, maybe there's a couple citations down there that relate to that page. What I'm saying is if you went to page 2, I wouldn't care. If you went to page 3, I'd be like,
Okay.
2 is 1.
Okay, so the very first question, can you go into more detail what you're asking exactly between pattern and process, let's say ecology? Because the other ones I feel like have kind of a.
You've got something. You're missing something in the first one.
Specificity.
Okay, let's do this. Let's
Right, those things we're trying to figure out how much of that is.
take these right here. And
We'll
then
just
go
get
move
rid of
over
that first one.
to.
How about you just remove the first one and then
Oh,
we'll be off and running. I'll write an extra page on the other one.
The person who created this whole thing, that's what she calls her book. There's not a chance to take one off. This is what landscape goes.
But didn't you say her book, she said that she didn't use her book anymore? So even by her own definition, the book is good.
I like how you're working that. That's great. No, it's like one of my favorite questions. That's why it's number 1. Number 1, that's like my favorite one. So, ecological processes are the response to usually the components of an ecosystem, which are made up of structure. What's the structure of an environment? Of any environment, what is it? What is the structure of it?
Geology and.
Geologic layers, excellent. The strata from deposits, historically, I love that. Anything else?
Track it carefully and then.
Structure. The plants that are growing there, their cover, how much cover they present, their heights, excellent. That's another one that goes on. The microbiota, including what's in the soil and the surface of the soil, excellent. The interaction, so that's an interesting thought. You've got all these things out here, and that can lead into the next part. So you've got all the dynamics that are associated with it. So the structure is what the rock surface and how that's layered out there.
Watch grasshoppers
Topography.
ceiling
Go slope itself. Physical structure of the environment, yes, that's part of the structure, yeah, so physical environment, the abiotic environment, really.
Stuff is getting mowed down.
And maybe I'm just
So you think
answering the question.
it's such a harsh environment with such dry conditions, there's no water.
That's all structure, and there's more to it than that. There's all these different components, the water is present.
Can't survive that.
What is the function of some
The
of those
reality
things?
is, I don't know.
How do they function?
It makes any difference, because if they could handle it, they're getting mowed down by so many little
Function.
living things out there that it's just crazy. And remote
Okay,
sensing.
so soils that are detaching, that are moving, create
Okay.
erosion
Additional
processes.
model features care about
Erosion
different speculative like this already started, you've already been working.
The function, the result of that, the process is kind of the result of
Sends a
the
signal back
structure,
up
and the
to
function is what these things
sensor.
perform. Plants, what do
Detect
plants
the
do?
wavelengths of energy.
They produce chlorophyll, they
Values are stored as
have biomass that captures radiant energy.
Suited
What happens is photosynthesis is the process of converting that
Take
into a
that
chemical form
information,
that you can
gather
use to
something,
sustain
again,
that
reflect
individual's
it, turn
life,
it into a
as
value,
well as other
a number.
things.
It can be analyzed by a computer
The
system.
consumers that are consuming on what you like their trust is kind of.
Visualize
Infiltration is a process that's related to the structure, the surface, the rocks, the soils, the texture of the soil, the plants that are on there, all influence how water moves down a site, changing the way it infiltrates and it works through a system that processes infiltration. They're all tied together, right? And so my question then to you is, here you've got
what the risks are.
these processes that are related to the structure and function, they give rise to certain patterns on the surface. And a lot of landscape ecologists trying to understand and characterize these patterns. And if you wanted to relate that question down here to this one right here, I would totally get it. To me, they're tightly interrelated. Number 1 and number 5. But I still think they're different if I want you to discuss them in separate contexts. What are ecological processes? How do these emerge? How do patterns emerge as a result of these interactions? And that's what I want you to think through and find something you want to write about.
So interesting watching people got headsets on. It's totally dark.
Drones.
It's a building.
You've got this, right? You know all about drones. You can find stuff on that. The ideas of scale,
Cool thing you've ever witnessed.
historical and future of GIS. Have you ever listened to any of the chapters of the book called
High tech,
Augmented?
big
Have I?
time. And they're processing images
I
for so
in a class, I forget it was cross building.
and
whoever
whoever
else
else
read
read
one chapter of
Augmented
Augmented.
data. So they'll have
You know what that is?
graphic light and collect
I
LiDAR
think it was
data.
written in 2013 or 14. Or maybe later than that. I think it's about, maybe 2015 is when it was written.
Plots.
And I'm tempted, I'd be tempted to have you just
Scattered across Utah.
download it on Overdrive or whatever and have you go through a chapter or two. It's very much tied into this concept.
I got to do it myself.
It's a book.
Pay for that, but it's
I got it.
available. Can't be initial.
I got it,
Get
Amazon.
from that, get guide.
Oh,
It
shoot.
really is worth going up there. I so much want to take you guys. But we've got these labs where you've got to learn house by house, which is interesting.
It's this right here by Brett King, Live from the Smart Lane, and it talks about, it's interesting, it talks about how we used to think about technology and where technology is placed in society. And he's saying, those people who say, I don't want to think too much about, I don't want to take the time to learn software, I don't want to get involved in this sort of thing. His point is that this world of technology is not going away. It is going to become more and more commonplace, and it's going to take over aspects of life. And certain jobs will change in the future. Our reliance on technological development is going to just become more and more common. It's going to be more standard. We're just going to be there. So it goes over all these different aspects, including natural and environmental elements of this, describing where the future is heading, where we're going to be at. It's a really interesting story.
Should we all go
He
to
says like the bank industry right now, banks
Advance?
are going to go.
So you want to show up and make it optional to just show
20 years. You're like, no longer vote bank. We actually drive.
You don't vote on some possibility.
That will never happen in the future. So you can sit there and fight it and keep on writing checks. Banks will keep giving you checks to fill out. Checks are going to get extinct. So it just talks about that kind of stuff. It applies to lots of different aspects of our living and how we depend on life.
Will we go?
in a technological
Class is
world.
gonna
It
be
also
in
talks in a different book just like it about how that could be the
When
demise
it's over, we'll all come back down
society.
and learn about hotspot analysis. Please pay attention because.
So my hope is that you'll turn in 1 week from today.
Operation, say to yourself,
1 week from today,
that's it. That is
at
it.
this time, if you can't do it 1 week from today, if you can't get this done,
For your
make
data
sure you
in class,
talk
you
to
might
Fred,
find
feel
homework
what to do, or if it's
Take it
just
easy. Lose it not.
trouble,
Don't
in your
hold
way,
on.
you just know you can't pull it up, let me know.
Yeah, you guys, thanks so
But-
much for today.
Hey,
Those questions right
6
away.
pages.
Any questions at all about this task?
Yeah.
About what I'm asking?
I'll make it optional for you if you want to send it by email or turn it in by Learning Suite or bring a copy in here. All of those are going to work. Whatever you feel happiest doing. Any more questions about this midterm? It's sort of experimental. I don't think I've ever done a test quite like this before. I've done take-homes at the end of the semester like this. The midterm one-pager like this is kind of new. So I think it's worthwhile. I like the idea. It takes a lot of pressure off of you to cram and get rid of it. It does not take the pressure off of you to understand the subtext. Anything else you want to ask me about this? I will post them as soon as class is over. I'll put them on Learning Suite.
You want them single spaced or double spaced?
In my mind, it's going to be single spaced because I think if you do double spaced, you'll have a paragraph and a half, and then it'll be done. Let's do single spaced. Let's just say across the board single spaced. Because honestly, if 1 page is not that much, it really isn't that much. If you beg to differ with me, please say so now. That again, this is my perspective as how much I think you can write, how much you can do. I don't want to overwhelm you with this, but the page doesn't seem much.
Is there a specific way you want us to cite it?
Like what?
Just like if we like find like we find an article that we're reading and we like bring it into the question, like is there a specific way you want us to like cite it, or do you just not care? Just as long as
don't
it's in
care.
there.
I like it if you're pulling outside sources to justify your answers. I totally think you should say, these guys said this, which is really kind of writing for you guys to be writing a thesis in a dissertation anyway. It's just a good thing to be doing anyway. When you're getting information or ideas, just throw at the end of the sentence, parentheses, here's the author, at the bottom you got a couple citations down there in your references. If you want to do them all at the very end as one big combined thing, that's totally fine too. If you think you're using the same reference for multiple answers, but I think at the bottom of each question make more sense, so I can see what you're referring to. That's all I've got to say about it. Anything else you want to say about this? All right. I'm excited. This is so exciting to see what you come up with. I think I'm going to learn a ton from your responses. So let's do it. I want to talk to you about remote sensing. We've been discussing it already to some extent. We're going to have other presentations coming in here and people talking about this subject. It's meaningful. It's very important in landscape stuff. So the term itself, the measurement or acquisition of information of some property. Hold on. Time out. Just time out on this. What I meant to actually pull up for you was one thing I wanted to show you. I just spaced until just that moment. We come back here to Learning Suite. Gosh. I want to show you one more thing that's related to the test that I forgot to bring up. It's going to take me a few more minutes to go through this. I want to make sure you know it's there and describe what it means. In Learning Suite, under content, there's these things called reading assignments. This is where they apply. These are some real critical papers that have existed. This right here, Westerby and Laycock, are historical papers that give the backbone, the basis for state and transition thoughts. And these are, Westerby and Laycock are both Australians. Ludwig and Tongway, they're Australians. That book right there is just fantastic. This thing is so awesome. It describes the idea of pattern and process, the very thing we've been discussing. They'll talk about hill slope hydrology and how water moves down, and they'll talk about feedback systems, positive and negative, that give rise to overall ecological response in that environment.
So you're saying
based
is
on
this week we read this book and the following week we do the test?
I am not saying that at all. What I'm saying to you is here's some great references for you to think about. Whether you cite them or not, or even read them, is totally up to you. But they're available to this. This right here is Grimes and Noble. Grimes, I told you about the triangle. This paper is about the triangle. Remember the triangle discussion I had with you? What's the triangle thing I was telling you about? I didn't have a pen to draw, but I will now. This matters. This matters. Here's the triangle. What are the elements of the triangle? I have competition right there is one of them, competition. Stress tolerance, Ruderl. There it is. Grimes will talk about that. If you're going to pull it up, you'll see the very thing I'm talking about. And then they'll have dots in here. For a species, this shows it has a mix of these three elements, but more on the competition and stress tolerance than the Ruderl. For this example, somebody give me a plant.
Got it.
Agave? Great one. Where are you going to put your dots? If you had sampled individuals of a population, where would the dots sort of occur on this place?
What are the corners? It's competition.
Stress tolerance, competition. Meaning they're going to compete with other species very effectively. Whatever makes a plant successful, competition. When you think about what makes a plant successful, competition.
The way its roots grow, it's drought
Its ability to pull in water.
How it does
Yes.
in different temperatures.
Is tolerance to temperature characteristics? Yes, that's good. They can still compete, right? At some point, though, we start talking about drought and temperature. Also, you start to that's a tough environment to live in. Maybe we start to express more stress tolerance. All my Great Basin bristlecone pine, and that sucker's down here, is not Ruderl at all. It rarely even germinates. There's a few seedlings here and there that pop up over hundreds of years. It does not compete well with duck fir. It loses all the time. And so if you think about that, and again, you think about that relates to the patterns you see in a landscape. Bristlecone pine is a pattern species. I can show you my map of its distribution. There are these little polygons all over the Great Basin. They're little polygons. They're not big, massive areas where it's out competing species or dominating the landscape. It is stuck in these little pockets where it's adapted to certain soil characteristics and elevation types or ranges and climate, all those things. It's not competitive. It is down here in stress tolerant. Crescent wheatgrass. How was crescent wheatgrass? So stress tolerant? I would say it's somewhat stress tolerant. It handles some pretty dry conditions. It's also highly competitive. Also the point of becoming invasive, not so much invasive, but it does not give ground, and so when it's planted with other species, usually it can almost form a monoculture. So we really hesitate to even plant crescent wheatgrass in mixed seedings because in the long run, because it's going to sit there for 40 years, other plants won't, it can handle these tougher conditions. Over time, you might just get a crescent wheatgrass stand. That's all you're going to get. And maybe even higher than here. That's where your populations. That's Grimes stuff. And in Grimes, that concept goes right into succession. If you're going to answer a question about succession, the attributes of these plants can have a huge influence on successional pathways, which is why I bring up this question on the thing here of how did plant adaptations influence this response? If you were to throw a little statement about Grimes concept in there, or Grimes or Noble and Slater. And these are called, the wording of Noble and Slater is right, no, it's wrong, is the vital attributes for plants. What makes them so successful? What are the characteristics of plants that allow them to adapt and persist? If it's ruderal, you have certain strategies for being invasive on a disturbance site that are going to serve you well there, but maybe not in different systems. Those are the vital attributes. All these kind of things relate to this discussion about ecosystem structure, competition, and succession, and how it gives rise then to these patterns. And patterns being dynamic, short-term or long-term. Like bristlecone pine patterns, those are long-term patterns. Those trees are sitting there for thousands of years and nothing's happened to that site except for these plants sitting there for thousands of years. Occasionally one will die from a lightning strike. Usually it doesn't kill the tree. They'll split it. There's rarely a tree that's burned all the way to the ground on the slopes I go out and study this tree. It's pretty much a permanent patch. You know, I talk about patches in their permanency or not. They may be the matrix. They may be the thing you're focusing on. We had a whole discussion on that. It can relate also to this. So I'm trying to get you to pull all the stuff that we've been talking about so far into this thought process, and then you work on that discussion and have a grand time doing it. I think it would be just totally a fun opportunity to explore your thoughts and some of the information that's out there. And those were all very broad questions. They're all just broad as heck. But make sure that you write enough to be convincing that you know something meaningful about those in this field that we're in. Okay, now we go to remote sensing.
So with how broad they are, do you want us to cover more from a broad perspective or go down a little bit more depth but narrow focus?
Yeah, because that question of pattern process to me is just as broad as can be. But if you start tying this kind of thought process into that, how vital attributes or plant adaptations give rise to certain characteristics on a landscape that form these patterns, you could go into that, and pretty soon you're focusing in on one element that really, in my mind, drives a lot of what you're seeing there. I feel like I just totally gave you the question. I just totally told you what right. But you don't have to. You kind of perfect. But just be. My point is, I'm just going to evaluate your stuff and say how well did they really get after this and understand it. That's how I'm going to say that. I see no hands up. Okay, remote sensing. It is this phenomenon of learning about something without coming in direct contact with it. That is the main thing. This is written by this organization right there. You know what that is? You should know this society. If you're in this class, you got to know the society. I used to be the president of this chapter when I was at Oregon State University. I'm still to this day not sure why Brigham Young University does not have a student chapter of this. That's the American Society for Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing is what that is. Anybody who's involved or interested in any kind of application of remote sensing or even GIS, modeling, that I loved having that at Oregon State. Man, it was great. We brought in people from all different departments and we talked about this content of applications. We went to the Oregon meetings for the ASPRS. They had a guy there talking about volcanoes and the bulges up on top of. There's some movement on Three Sisters, and they're measuring that using photogrammetry. Also, over on Mount St. Helens, inside that caldera, they were discussing the potential of that thing erupting again, and they're tracking the movement of the surface of that caldera. And interesting as heck, it was really a cool discussion. Others talked about different applications in our field of natural resources that were totally interesting. Point is, that's what they focus on is this. Developing techniques and technologies for quantifying something without touching it from a different perspective. That could be long distances. Right? Outer space, tracking things from outer space is such a cool concept to me. It's amazing. We have satellites. We can track what's going on the Earth with a satellite. It blows my mind every time I think about it. All the way down to cameras right above the surface. Who in here has done the most fine resolution work out of anybody in here with remote sensing? Who's got it? Tom, put your hand up. You've got to be in the race. Tom Bates has got to be in the race. Who's done something more than flying a drone about 30 feet above the ground looking for cactus plants?
On the ground, that's a good question.
Who in here has had to fly a drone?
Well, to collect for the project.
Fine, that's a good point. All of you, I hope at some point, see the value of flying drones over a plant community and doing something like measuring flower cover. You two could be a battle over this, really. Flying and assessing flower cover for pollinators. Looking at individual little and how big are these flowers? They're tiny little flowers, right? Little things, and trying to figure out how much of that is available for pollinators. That's such a cool question. Such a cool question. And I don't know why I keep walking over here, I don't need to be there. These devices, the things you're using to record it, the sensor, the satellite, aircraft, they could be, the object phenomena could be on the Earth's surface or in the atmosphere or out in space, it doesn't matter. It is to contrast with in situ measurements where you physically measuring stuff in the field from plots usually. And so there's a wide range of types of remote sensed information you can gather. Graduate student Jesse Morris, who's working with me, he's got cameras, but they're actually on the side, and he's been tracking plant growth of seedlings that were seeded out at the Hill Air Force Base bombing range. So these were seeded in rows and tracking their growth measurements over time with the camera at an oblique perspective, not above but to the side. You can track it carefully, and then with that, he had them set to be motion sensitive, these Reconyx cameras. And if you want to watch it, I can show you his little presentation on it of what goes on in a seeding event in the Great Basin. And it would be horrendous to be a seedling out here in our desert. There are several different species of small mammals. Rabbits come bounding in and just go nuts on seedlings. And there were a couple pronghorn, a couple deer in the images, had some birds down plucking them. Grasshoppers, they'd watch grasshoppers go to a seedling and go, next one. Grasshoppers. You're fighting everything out there. So his open plots were not fenced off. Stuff was getting mowed down by everything. So you think it's such a harsh environment with such dry conditions. There's no water. It's intense summers. Stuff can't survive out there. And the reality is, I don't know if that really makes any difference, because even if they could handle it, they're getting mowed down by so many little living things out there that it's just crazy. And remote sensing can pick that stuff up. Picks it up. Okay. Rendition or model features characterized by spectral reflectance. We've already started to talk about this. You've already been working on the concepts of spectral reflectance. Sunlight's hitting it, sending a signal back up to the sensor, and you can detect those wavelengths of energy, which we'll talk about here really soon. Values are stored as quantitative numerical values suited for input into a computer. That's big time. If you can take that information, if you can gather something, again, from reflectance and turn it into a value, a number, that can be analyzed by a computer system, and there's a whole wide range of things you can do, which you've already started to do. You've already started this. Visualizing the computer as pixels, we've talked about that already enough, picture elements. Applications, wide use of applications, increased use for making management decisions. So much of these tools and their products they produce can inform people, can inform you to understand how things are operating, what the risks are, and how to more effectively manage down the road. Weaknesses, initial high cost, high data volumes, indirect. These are some things that it's easy to sell the concept of remote sensing, but it's way oversold in so many instances. I already talked about that. The initial high cost depends. That can depend. If you go like we did for one project, we contracted out with Air Graphics up in Salt Lake. You know, I'm talking about the people in the little cave. They're like all in there. Oh, you got to go up there. I still want to get this so bad because it's so interesting. You walk in there, people got headsets on. They're in there. It's totally dark. You're in a cave. But it's a building. There's no windows. It's dark, and they got their mouse and they got their goggles on. It is just the most cool thing you've ever witnessed. And they've got 5, 6, 7 screens in front of them. And they're just moving stuff around. It is fantastic. High tech, big time. And they're processing images for Salt Lake County, for Utah County, and whoever else across the entire West wants data. So they'll have aircraft flight and collect LiDAR data, or they'll go get remote sensitive information and then process it for you. We did this for a set of plots. I don't know, a couple dozen plots scattered across Utah. They charge us $30,000 for it. I can buy a lot of drones for $30K. Go do it myself, but I can't do it as fast. I don't have a team of people to sit there and process it. I got to do it all myself. So we pay for that, but it's available. Can be initial high cost, but the stuff you get from that, invaluable. It really is worth going up there. I so much want to take you guys up there. But we've got these labs where you've got to learn hotspot analysis. I cannot take you away from that, which is Thursday. we're gonna have to talk about remote sensing more later as well. On Thursday, I will talk to you about remote sensing, and then Tara Bishop is gonna come and talk to you about hotspot analysis. She was a graduate student previously in this class, used hotspot analysis for her PhD. She's now Dr. Bishop, and she is prepared to come and present to you. However, I don't know if you know Sister Lee, Rebecca Lee. Her thesis defense is at 2 o'clock on Thursday. So Tara needs to be there from 2 to 3. She'll then show up at 3 and run you through this lab of hotspot analysis from 3 to 4:50. Do you want to come at 3 o'clock? Do you want to come at 2 and we do things together? I can give you all kinds of stuff to think about, work on for an hour before Tara is available. Should we all go to Rebecca's defense? Or do you just want to show up and make it optional and you just show up here at 3 o'clock? Any votes? If you don't vote, then I'll just say class will be held at 2 o'clock and I'll show up and we'll start doing stuff. You want to go to the defense? Will you go? Will some of you go to that defense if we have that as part of this? To me, going to other graduate students' defenses are absolutely worth the time. Will we go? Okay, class is going to be starting at 2 o'clock at Rebecca Lee's defense. And when that's over, we'll all come back down and we're going to learn about hotspot analysis. Please pay attention because like Tara, you will likely see this thing in operation and say to yourself, that's it. That is it. I can do this for my thesis. I've got this. For your data in this class, you might find hotspot to be a ticket for you. So please do not, don't blow it off. You need to come. Okay, you guys, thanks so much for showing up today. I'll get those posted right away. If you have any questions at all about this test, if something still is not clear in your head about what I'm asking, please talk to me about this.